Hello friends, this is Professor Rahul Shimpi here. I am currently working as Assistant Professor at Sri Prakach Chand Jain College of Pharmacy and Research, Palaskede, a small village which is situated at 3 kilometers away from Jamner district Jalgaon. So dear friends, today we are here to discuss about the calcium channel blockers as antihypertensives. Throughout this video, we are going to discuss about the various functions of calcium ion channels, including the functions of calcium ions itself. Thereafter, within this presentation, we are also going to discuss about the various types of calcium ion channels. Thereafter, as our topic is there calcium channel blockers, we are going to study in detail about the classification, advantages, pharmacological actions, therapeutic uses, and adverse effects of calcium channel blockers. So friends, before studying the action of calcium channel blockers, we should know what is the exact importance or the significance of calcium ions in our body. So let us first of all understand what are the functions of calcium ion channels or the calciums in our body. So dear friends, the very first use of the calcium ions in our body is in the building of strong bones and teeth. It has been said that the 99% of the calcium present in our body, it is being present in the, or it is being used in the formation of stronger bones and teeth. So generally the calcium present towards the bones and teeth, it is in the form of calcium hydroxyapatite. Apart from these, these calcium ions are also involved in the coagulation of blood. Almost 12 clotting factors are well known for us, and among these the fourth clotting factor, it is the calcium ions. So the calcium ions plays the important role during the coagulation of blood, where the large reactions has to be take place. Thereafter, the most important role of calcium ions is in the generation and the transmission of impulses. And this generation and the transmission of impulses is made possible with the help of release of particular neurotransmitter. We know very well these neurotransmitters are stored within the storage vesicle at the nerve terminals. So whenever a particular action potential reaches, it results into the release of neurotransmitter from the storage vesicle. So during the release of neurotransmitter from the storage vesicle, this calcium ion plays the important role in the constriction of storage vesicle so that the content of storage vesicle can be poured into the synaptic cleft. Thereafter, the most important function as far as our topic is considered, the calcium ions are involved in contraction of all types of muscle. It has been said that the calcium ions are located extracellularly. So whenever a particular action potential reaches to the calcium ion channel pores, it results into the opening of calcium ion channel pores. And due to the opening of the calcium ion channel pores, due to the differences in the concentration gradient, the calcium ion moves from extracellular region to the intracellular region. Once the calcium ion moves inside the intracellular region, they also facilitate the release of calcium from sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum or the endoplasmic reticulum are considered as the storage sites for the calcium intracellularly. So as a result, it results into increase in the calcium ions intracellularly. As soon as the level of calcium ion increases intracellularly, it results into the activation of troponin and the blockage of tropomyosin. And the blockage of this tropomyosin and the activation of troponin is being responsible for the interaction between the actin and myosin filament, which is being required for the process of muscle contraction. So the contraction of the muscle again requires the presence of calcium ions. Again, it has been found that many enzymes for their action they require the calcium as a cofactor. The examples of such enzymes include nitric oxide synthase, protein phosphatase and adenylate cyclase. As far as the endocrinal glands are considered, the release of hormone from the endocrinal gland is also required the presence of calcium ions. So as soon as the calcium ion enters within a particular endocrinal gland, it results into a constriction of endocrine gland, releasing its content into the blood. And it is also true about the other chemicals where they are stored. So whenever a particular chemical or the hormones, it is stored within the storage vesicle and it is required to be poured down or it is required to be secreted, it requires the calcium ions. And the most important one is what? The calcium ion plays the vital role in order to maintain the heartbeat normal. And now friends, with the help of this presentation, we are familiar how important the calcium ions are there in our body as they are engaged in many of the vital functions. Now friends, as I said that once we got introduced to the functions of calcium channels or the calcium ions, we will move to the next part of our presentation and it is known as the types of calcium channels. About the four types of the calcium ion channels are found to be present. The very first one among that one, it is voltage sensitive calcium channels. Number 2, receptor operated calcium channels. Number 3, leak channel or the stretch operated channels, and number 4, sodium calcium exchange channel. So the very first type of the calcium ion channel, it is the voltage sensitive calcium channel. The name itself indicates that they are sensitive to the change in the voltage. So they get activated whenever there is a decrease in the membrane action potential to the minus 40 millivolt or the less than. These are also influenced by the depolarizing external stimuli. So the depolarizing external stimuli or whenever the membrane action potential drops below the minus 40 millivolt, it results into the activation of voltage sensitive calcium channels. And due to the activation, it results into the opening of these calcium channels so that the extracellular calcium ions moves into the intracellular region. The another important type of the calcium channel is the receptor operated calcium channels. Now with the help of its name, we came to know that these are the calcium channels are operated with the help of receptor. Means these are the calcium channels associated with the receptor. So unless and otherwise these receptors are stimulated by the presence of particular agonist, these calcium channels will not get activated. So the activation of these receptor operated calcium channel takes place due to the occupation of receptors with the certain agonist, for example noradrenaline, angiotensin 2, certain hormones and the tissue factors. The another type of the calcium channels include the leak channel or the stretch operated channel. The name indicates that a small amount of calcium ions continuously leak during the resting conditions. And once these calcium ions are moved intracellularly during the resting conditions, they are again revert back extracellular with the help of calcium ATPase pump. These receptors are also known as stretch operated channels because they are also stimulated upon the stretching. These leak channels are generally found to be present towards the blood vessels and found to increase the calcium influx or the Ca2 plus influx upon the stretching. And now the last and the important one is what? The sodium calcium exchange channel. It is said important one just because of what? They are involved in the actions of cardiac glycosides, but they do not have any significance as far as our calcium channel blockers are considered. So they are not involved in the actions of calcium channel blockers. Rather than that, they are involved in the actions of cardiac glycosides, and they are generally found to be present in the heart and blood vessels. Now we got introduced to the various types of the calcium ion channels. Now let us have in detail about the voltage sensitive calcium channels. So we are going to concentrate towards the voltage sensitive calcium channel just because of what? Our calcium channels blockers are believed to block the voltage sensitive calcium channels. These voltage sensitive calcium channels are further said to be having the 5 subtypes. Among these five subtypes, the three types are considered as the major one. So the first three types include the L type, T type and N type are found to be major, while the another two types are considered as minor, including P type and the Q type. The L type, the name itself suggests that they are long lasting. So the L within a name, it signifies the long lasting, and they are found dominantly in the cardiac and the smooth muscles. The T stands for, in the another type, it is the transient. Transient means what? Short acting, and they are generally present towards the SA node, thalamic and the other neurons. Whenever we speak about the N type, the N stands for neither L type nor T type, and sometimes they are also uh, known as the neuronal, and their location, they are generally located towards the neurons of CNS and the secretory glands. And very few things are well known about the remaining two types of the voltage sensitive calcium channels, P and the Q type. The alphabet P within the P type, it represents the Purkinje fibers, and while the Q type of the voltage sensitive calcium channels are found to be present towards the skeletal muscles. Now let us go to the various blockers available for these voltage sensitive calcium channels. So as far as the L type of the voltage sensitive calcium channels are considered, they are easily blocked with our calcium channel blockers. Calcium channel blockers are found to be less effective in the blockage of the remaining types of the voltage sensitive calcium channels. Means it can be said that the calcium channel blockers target the L type of voltage sensitive calcium channels rather than the remaining type of the calcium channels. In order to block the T type of the voltage sensitive calcium channels, it can be well blocked, or their action can be well blocked with the help of flunarizine and ethosuximide, while the blockers of N type of voltage sensitive calcium channels include gabapentin and cadmium. With the help of this image, we will try to understand the structure and the function of voltage sensitive calcium ion channels. Generally, the calcium ion channels are present in the three states. The first one, that may be present in a resting state, it is known as the closed state. Activated state, it is known as a open state, and inactivated state, it is known as a blocked state. Generally, these calcium ion channel pores are found to be present within the any cellular membrane, and these ion channel pores possess the activation gate and inactivation gate in association with the receptor. So receptors for the inactivation gate are generally located at the half of the intracellular region. During the resting stage, it has been found that activation gate is closed so that no more calcium ions get diffused from extracellular region to the intracellular region. As soon as the membrane depolarization stimulus reaches to a particular cell, it results into the activation of activation gate, resulting into the opening of activation gate, so that the calcium ions moves from extracellular region to the intracellular region with the help of concentration gradient. Concentration gradient means what? There are the differences in the concentration of a particular ion across the any membrane. So definitely with the help of concentration gradient, the calcium ions moves from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. As soon as the calcium ions moves inside the cell, moves inside the muscle or the any kind of tissue, it results into increase in the action potential, and now the cell or that muscle can be said activated. Once the action potential is completed, once the action potential is passed, then after it results into the stimulation of a inactivation gate, so that no more calcium ions are now allowed to enter inside region, and with the effect of the time, these calcium ions are referred back into the extracellular region. This inactivation gate can be also blocked with the help of certain drugs, so-called calcium channel blocker. So the calcium channel blockers acts over the receptor associated with the inactivation gate, resulting into the stimulation of inactivation gate so that no more calcium ions get diffused from extracellular region to the intracellular region. Generally, calcium blockers are found to be work when a particular cell is in the state of activated, means that has been already depolarized. So means what, calcium channel blockers are having the ability to block the activated calcium channels rather than the inactivated calcium channels. So they are also known as a user dependent calcium channel blockers. Now with the help of this image, I hope that you might have understood how exactly the calcium channel blockers, which is being known as a voltage sensitive calcium channel blockers, are going to be act. So there, what are the driving force that results into the activation of this calcium ion? It is nothing but what, the external depolarizing stimuli or the decrease in the membrane potential towards the minus 40 millivolt or less than that results into the activation of calcium ion channel pores. Now let us move to the next part of our presentation, and that is nothing but what, the classification. So how exactly these calcium channel blockers are going to be classified? As far as the classification is considered, these calcium channel blockers are divided into the three categories. The very first one, based upon their chemical structure, they may be called as a dihydropyridine. Based upon their chemical structure, they may be either called as a dihydropyridines. Second one, phenylalkylamines. The examples include verapamil. And the third one, benzothiazepines. Examples include diltiazem. Further, these dihydropyridines, based upon the plasma half-life of the drug, further get classified as ultra short-acting dihydropyridines. The T1 of these ultra short-acting is equal to the 1 minute or the several minutes. Example includes the clevidipine. The another one, it is said the short-acting. These include the drugs those are having the T1 half in between 2 to 4 hours. Examples include nifedipine, nicardipine and nimodipine. The third one, it must be said intermediate acting, as the T1 half ranges in between 8 to 12 hours. The examples include nitrendipine, lacidipine, and the last one, long acting. They are so called long acting because of what, their T1 half ranges in between 20 to 48 hours. The two drugs include felodipine and the another one, amlodipine. Amlodipine is having the largest T1 half around 24 to the 48 hours. So now we must classify the calcium channel blockers, as we said, into the three categories, but roughly they can be classified as either dihydropyridines or the non-dihydropyridines. Now friends, we are having the variety of antihypertensive agent, but the calcium channel blockers are considered as the first line or the first choice of agent in the treatment of hypertension, because of what, they possess the certain advantages over the other type of antihypertensive agent. So what are the advantages? Let us see one by one. So dear friends, these calcium channel blockers are generally considered as the safe to be used in asthmatic patient. When the beta blockers are used as an antihypertensive, they are found to produce the bronchoconstriction and to worsen the conditions of asthma. So their use in the asthmatic patients was questioned. So the calcium channel blockers can be used with a safety in asthmatic patients. Certain antihypertensive agents were found to increase the plasma renin activities and also found to produce certain adverse effects over the lipid profile, for example beta blocker, and certain antihypertensive drugs including angiotensin 2 blocker AC inhibitors found to increase the action of plasma renin, or the plasma renin activity is found to be increased with the use of AC inhibitors, renin inhibitors and angiotensin 2 blockers, while such effect is not produced in case of the calcium channel blocker. It has been also found that the chances of development of postural hypotension and rebound phenomenon are also less during the use of calcium channel blockers. The certain antihypertensive agent like SC inhibitors, angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, and renin inhibitors were found to produce the impotence, while the calcium channel blockers are having the advantage over that one. Again, during the pregnancy, SC inhibitors, angiotensin 2 blocker, renin inhibitors are found to be contraindicated where they produces the phytopathic effect, while the calcium channel blockers are lacking of this phytopathic effect, and yes, it can be used during the pregnancy. Now friends, let us concentrate towards the next part of our calcium channel blocker. It is the pharmacological actions. So how the number of organs respond to the use of calcium channel blockers we are going to use. So what we said, these are going to block the influx of calcium channels from extracellular region to the intracellular region. So it may result into decrease in the activity of certain cells. For example, it may decrease the activity of muscles, it may decrease the activity of neurons, or it may decrease the activity of certain glandular secretions. So what does exactly takes place? Let us discuss under the section pharmacological actions. So as far as the prototype drugs are considered, the verapamil is considered as a cardioselective. Nifedipine, which is the hydroxypyridine, it is considered as the vascular smooth muscle selective, while diltiazem shows the intermediate selectivity in between the verapamil and the nifedipine. The easiest way to remember all these selectivity is what? Their classification. When we say that the calcium channel blockers may be either dihydroxypyridines or non-dihydroxypyridines. So when we hear a word non dihydroxypyridine, so the word non should be reflected with the nodal activity, means non dihydroxypyridines are being responsible for the depression of nodal effect, means it depresses the SA node, AV node, etc. It can be remembered, while the hydroxypyridines are considered to decrease the peripheral vascular resistance. Dihydropyridines, the D alphabet of dihydropyridine signifies the decreased peripheral vascular resistance, means they are much more selective towards the vascular smooth muscle. So it is the reason for what we said the nifedipine is vascular smooth muscle selective, while verapamil is cardioselective, means it primarily acts over the SA node and the AV node, while diltiazem is having the selectivity in between the verapamil and the nifedipine. Now what will be the effect of these calcium channel blockers over the smooth muscle? So the very first one, we should consider the smooth muscles of blood vessels. So definitely the calcium channel blockers are going to produce the relaxation of vascular smooth muscle, which can be characterized by the vasodilation. And it has been found that they produce markedly arterial vasodilation as compared to the vasodilation in the veins. So this has to be remembered, the effect of calcium channel blockers over as a vasodilator, that they produce the arteriolar vasodilation rather than the venular dilation. And now whether the smooth muscles are also only located towards the vascular smooth muscles or the blood vessels? No, it also target, these calcium channel blockers also target certain extravascular smooth muscle, including bronchial, biliary, intestinal, vesical and uterine. So all these muscles are also found to be relaxed. So when the bronchial smooth muscles are relaxed, it can be characterized by bronchodilation. When biliary muscles are relaxed, it can be results into relaxation of biliary muscles, intestinal muscle relaxation, vesical relaxation and the uterine relaxation. So it can be used in the treatment of certain spasm, means if a person is suffering from the biliary spasm, intestinal spasm, these calcium channel blockers can be used. These drugs are also found to be involved in the relaxation of detrusor muscles of urinary bladder, and this may result into the difficulty in the urination during the micturition. Now what we said, that the non-dihydroxypyridines were considered as the much more nodal depressant effect, or having the much more nodal depressant effect. So just because of what, it may result into the negative inotropic and the chronotropic effect. It results into decrease in the heart rate as well as the force of heart contraction. So what will you find, that it results into decrease in heart rate, contractility and the conduction velocity. It has been found that it do not produce the any effect, or the it do not produce the any changes towards the cardiac volume or the cardiac output. So let us concentrate towards the dihydropyridine type of the calcium channel blockers. So friends, the first calcium channel blockers belonging to the class dihydropyridine, it was the nifedipine, and this nifedipine was introduced as a short acting capsule. But it has been said that it has been found that it produces the vasodilation, which is associated with the reflex sympathetic activation leading to tachycardia. What happened here? The nifedipine, dihydroxypyridine, these are the dihydroxypyridine, and these dihydroxypyridines are considered as the much more vascular selective, means they produces the vasodilation. But as the vasodilation is produced, it results into the sympathetic activation leading to the tachycardia. Means be remember, these drugs are not useful in case of the tachycardia when it is associated with the ventricular tachycardia. Just because of what, they themselves produces the tachycardia, these drugs are found to be ineffective in the treatment of ventricular tachycardia, and thereby it results into the increase in the risk of ischemia. Further, it may result into the myocardial infarction, and mortality can also result due to the sudden fall in the blood pressure. So what was the problem? The problem was the short acting nifedipine. So whenever this short acting nifedipine was given, it was associated with the certain adverse effect. So just because of this, in order to overcome this problem, then after extended release formulation of nifedipine or the truly long acting dihydroxypyridine, examples including felodipine and amlodipine are nowadays preferred than that of the short acting dihydroxypyridine, for example nifedipine. So just because of their short acting or the immediate release of the capsules of nifedipine, it results into certain adverse effect including palpitation, headache, flushing and the peripheral edema. The term peripheral edema, it is just because of what, it produces the precapillary dilation and reflux post capillary constriction. What do you mean by this? Means it produces pre-capillary dilation. Capillary means what? Our blood capillaries. So what is the portion just pre to the capillary? These are nothing but the arterioles and the arteries. So it produces the dilation of arterioles and the arteries. It doesn't create any problem, but it results into a reflex post capillary constriction, means veins are going to be constrict, arterioles are going to be dilate, and it results ultimately results into increase in the hydrostatic pressures towards the capillary, resulting into more and more discharge of water through the blood capillaries. It results into the accumulation of water towards the peripheral region. It is also known as the ankle edema, as the edema over the legs are found to be produced. And as we said earlier, that due to the relaxation of certain muscles, and if that muscles involved are of a urinary bladder, it may result into difficulty in urinary voiding, and gastroesophageal reflux may also found to be worsen due to the relaxation of lower esophageal sphincters. As the lower esophageal sphincters are relaxed, they do not get closed properly, and as a result it results into the backflow of the gastric content into the esophagus. Now we got introduced to the dihydroxypyridines. Now let us get introduced to the non-dihydropyridines. The examples of non-dihydropyridines include verapamil. The name itself indicates the non-dihydropyridines means these are having the much more depressant actions towards the nodal system. Means they are having much more depressant effect over the heart compared to the diltiazem. It also found to possess the certain non-specific alpha adrenergic blocking action, and specifically it is the alpha 1. So due to the stimulation of alpha 1 receptor, it results into vasoconstriction with the help of its agonist. So what we are going to choose here, the calcium channel blockers, non-dihydropyridine type of calcium channel blockers are also having the alpha adrenergic blocking action, which also adds to the peripheral vasodilation. But again here comes a limitation, is what it produces the tachycardia, and just because of the production of this tachycardia, it's blunted its use as a negative chronotropic effect. And now it is the reason for what these calcium channel blockers are contraindicated in tachycardia, in ventricular tachycardia. I am repeating the word, they are contraindicated in the ventricular tachycardia, but they are approved to be used in the all type of angina, supraventricular tachyarrhythmia, and mild to moderate type of the hypertension. So tachyarrhythmia, they are contraindicated in ventricular tachycardia, but they are approved for the use in the treatment of supraventricular tachyarrhythmia. Means the tachyarrhythmia that is produced just supra to the ventricular position, means due to the activation of the nodal system, your SA node, AV node has their activity has been found to be increased. In that case, these non-dihydropyridine type of the calcium channel blockers or the dihydropyridine type of calcium channel blockers can be used. And as far as the diltiazem is considered, it is considered as less potent vasodilator than that of the nifedipine and the verapamil. As we said that the activity of diltiazem lies in between the verapamil and the verapamil and the nifedipine. It also results into the direct depression of SA node and AV conduction, which is equivalent to the verapamil. Now, this is a point related to the drug-drug interactions. It has been found that verapamil diltiazem reduces the binding of digoxin to the tissue protein known as a P-glycoprotein. And this is the P-glycoprotein which is being responsible for retarding the absorption of digoxin within the intestine and increasing the excretion of digoxin. But as the verapamil and diltiazem reduces the binding of digoxin with the plasma glycoprotein, it results into increasing the absorption and decreasing the renal excretion of digoxin. Means verapamil diltiazem results into increase in the digoxin toxicity. Now the last part of our today's discussion, it is the therapeutic uses of the calcium channel blockers. The very first one, it is these calcium channel blockers are used in the treatment of angina pectoris. As we know very well that these calcium channel blockers are having the ability to depress the SA node and AV node, means to depress the activity of nodal system, and the second one, they also results into the vasodilation, thereby reducing the afterload over the heart. And As such, it results into, due to the depression of the SA node, it results into decrease in the heart rate and reducing the workload over the heart, reducing the demand of oxygen supply. So thereby, these drugs are preferred in the treatment of angina pectoris. Just because of what? They improve the blood supply to the heart just because of vasodilation, and they decrease the demand of oxygen by depressing the nodal system. So they are found to be effective in the treatment of angina pectoris. But the one most important thing is what? The calcium channel blockers are not the first line of treatment in the treatment of unstable angina. Yes, you can use the calcium channel blockers in the treatment of stable angina and a variant type of angina, but in case of the unstable angina, these drugs are contraindicated or should be used with a caution. Hypertension, all kinds of dihydropyridines, diltiazem and verapamils are among the first line of drug for hypertension. Cardiac arrhythmia, now we just discussed. So whenever there is a tachyarrhythmia, that is being known as a paroxysmal supraventricular tachyarrhythmia, or for the control of ventricular rate in the supraventricular arrhythmias, the drugs like verapamil and diltiazem can be used. And be remember that these drugs are contraindicated during the ventricular tachyarrhythmia, but still these drugs can be effective in the treatment of paroxysmal supraventricular tachyarrhythmia, where the tachyarrhythmia is produced due to the excessive activation of SA node. So the nodal activity is increased, and this nodal activity can be depressed with the help of calcium channel blockers. So it is the reason for what verapamil and diltiazem are highly selective in the treatment of paroxysmal supraventricular tachyarrhythmia. The word paroxysmal indicates the occasional or the time by time increase in the heart rate. So the heart rate in case of the paroxysmal supraventricular tachyarrhythmias are found to be increased around 150 to 250 beats per minute. Calcium channel blockers are also found to be used in the treatment of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. This hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, it is a disorder in which heart muscles are found to be abnormally thickened. That can be said as a hypertrophy. Now verapamil like drugs are preferred for the treatment of hypertrophic and cardiomyopathy. It is also having the other uses. For example, nifedipine, it serves as the alternative drug for the premature labor, where its use as a uterine relaxant is taken into the consideration. And the next one, verapamil, it is used to suppress the nocturnal leg cramps. Thank you very much, friends, for our whole discussion. The entire content of this presentation is taken from these three books. I am very thankful to the author of all these three books, FSK Barar, HL Sharma and KD Tripathi sir. And whatever the content has been presented within this video, it has been all taken through these three textbooks, and I must also suggest for my students to refer all these three books as far as our pharmacology is considered. Thank you very much, friends, and I hope this presentation and this session might be helpful for you. Have a nice day and goodbye.